Hello and welcome back to part 3 of drone masks tutorials. In this part we will look at parent UV mode. If you haven't seen the previous parts, part 1 and 2, I would suggest you look at those first. Because in this tutorial we will not try to make new mask setup, so we will not do everything from scratch, as that was covered in the previous tutorials, and to save time we will just explore the new mode. You can find the modes in your mask settings under projection mapping methods, and here the one we will be talking about is this parent UV. If you have drones that are spawned on your meshes, which you animate and design, this is the projection plane. So this geometry is projection plane from which your drones will inherit the color. To simplify, it means that if you have faces, you can put image onto those faces, just like in regular modeling with your texturing UV editing workspace, so like we have here. These faces basically will determine what color will drones inherit. So if you put over texture like this, and it can be animated texture again, so it can be a video, then you can get effects like these. So you can actually wrap your videos, textures, projections around your geometry. So to set this up, all you need is the same setup and the underlying geometry. What is different from the other modes is that you will actually need faces. If we have a geometry, we need faces. So this deleting faces wouldn't cut it. But if you have the faces, then you can go into your UV editing workspace and you will have these faces here as well. Because what happens if you don't have them, let's delete them again. Then you can see I'm selecting all the edges and vertices, but I have no texture map. Thing is, if you have some your custom made object and if you have faces already, you sometimes need to unwrap them as well. There's a lot of great tutorials on YouTube on unwrapping and texture mapping and basically doing all of that. All of the same principles will apply. It's just that instead of us just getting this texture onto the 3D geometry, we also will get it onto the drones. So in this case you can see we have this like cone structure here, cut bottom and top, and it's rotated, so it's like this void. We also have for it faces. You will need to fill your faces for geometry, and it has to be the parent geometry of your drones. Most of the time, the geometry on which you spawn the drones on. When you have this ready, then you can go into default mask, adding your drones, adding your mask cube or different object in and setting up the setup. This is the same as you would do in our part 1 series. Next, you would go in these settings here where you would have the color and change it to your parent UV mode. When you change it, let's go into rendered, everything seems black, or it could be white depending on your setup, but you have to make active the mesh and go into settings here, and you have to click this use parent UV surface. Most of the time it will be not checked. It was checked because I was just testing this mesh for the tutorial, and when you have it checked, then you can choose your media. So it could be an image, it could be a video, and it could be a video specifically made for your texture map. We'll cover that. But in this case, we have just a random effect like this one here. What it will do is create effect like this. So let's just preview it. And in a second, I will show you how the video looks. To actually achieve this, if you did all the steps I showed you and you still don't see anything, most likely it's because, yes, you may have the mesh, you may have all your faces, but you may not have your UV map yet. To get your UV map, you should go to UV editing workspace, and I have a old media here. This is the one we selected right now, and you can see if I select all, I have all my UV map showing up here. But basically, to get your UV map, you can watch some UV unwrapping videos, but for simple geometry like this, you could just use your UV unwrap or smart unwrap features. Most of the time, they will make a decent UV map for you. When you have this UV map, it's editable, so you can scale it, you can move it by specific segments. So basically you can edit it just like you can edit your mesh in edit mode. Also, there are some split options and more advanced UV map editing tools, but we will not go into that. I would suggest you watching some UV videos. There are a lot and they are great on the YouTube. But what we are concerned with is that all the same concepts apply, but we also get this projection not just on our mesh, but we are getting this projection onto our drones with our Drone Show Studio tool. Yeah, if you have all these steps done, you should see your video projecting. You can also easily see what you applied directly on your geometry, so on your faces here. And to do that, you can just click this button here, and you can see this video will show up on your mesh, so it might be a bit easier to understand what's actually happening because it's a higher resolution than just looking at your drones. But if you don't want to see it, you can hide it. That's mostly it about just setup. But what you can also do is can modify your UV map. So let's just look at a simple example. You may have already seen this in part 1. So we have this cat. And by default, if I go select this mesh and go into UV editing, you may see that this UV mesh is a bit modified. First of all, this is not square, it doesn't have even distances. And I did these modifications because I will show you basically how, by default, if you UV unwrap this, to see it update here, you should go outside your mesh into object mode, and you can see this is what by default would be projected, and this doesn't look good at all. So what we can do by not changing our geometry and mesh to make this much better is just to go inside UV editing space here and scale this up. Same shortcuts apply here as in 3D space, in 3D viewport. Scale it so it really fits the whole video, and then we can just do a little of moving around these all of these different points so they better fit the video. In this case, I will focus on the eyes. So let's say move this. I can also move this a little bit. And this I can skip one row because there's not much of change happening. Well, in the mouth, I guess, but most of the change for this video is in the eyes. So I will try to just fill every pixel of the eyes here. And of course, your projection will benefit greatly by choice and the pre-production of your texture and your video, because on drones we have a very small resolution. We don't have a lot of pixels, so to say, the drones to play with. So it's good to choose the best fitting media or create it specifically for drones. That would be the best. You can use something like After Effects or maybe even Blender. But probably more something for 2D animation. So let's see this. So it haven't yet applied it because we are still in edit mode. If I go now into object mode, you can see this is much better. And we can also play it. As you can see, all the animation and everything looks correct now because we just edited this UV map. Most of it is just working with your texture, working with your texture map, because we have just few other settings that will help you visualize this on your geometry, but most of the actual corrections and things you will do with this mode is just working with your UV map and again the texture you have in the video.